Morning everyone, how's it going? And welcome back to This Week in F1, where of course we are going to start with the Monza Grand Prix. Now we started off the weekend with both Russell and Lewis signing their souls to the devil for another 2 years, extending their current contracts to 2025, despite their car being the equivalent to hot shite.
Lewis, the car is bad, we know. Please drive it.
Hamilton has said that he's signed his contract due to unfinished business.
Do you know what you have done? Business!
Now we went into Saturday's qualifying knowing what to expect, a Verstappen pole to ruin the Ferrari party and put the entirety of Italy into a state of depression. However, that's not what we got, with Carlos Sainz putting an absolute stonker of a lap to put the drunken horses on pole, with Verstappen P2 and the miserable Monegasque in P3. Now onto the race, and before the race even started, Yuki Tsunoda was out as his AlphaTauri blew up on the formation lap. Not the first time the Japanese have been forced to stop by an explosion. Eventually, after a very confusing 20 minutes, which saw the mechanics doing running, the 5 red lights went out and we got underway. And off the start, George manages to jump Perez and Sainz manages to keep the lead. And for these blissful few laps, Max Verstappen finally wasn't leading a Grand Prix, because Sainz put on a defensive performance for the ages. Until he didn't, but we will get to that in a minute. Behind them though, there was a battle between Perez and Russell, which was getting heated with a few elbows here and there, culminating in a Perez lockup, which he then blamed on George.
He pushed me off.
Which is weird, because it's usually George blaming his mistakes on someone else.
He just fully turned into me.
But the point is, the Mexican did eventually make it past the turned into me terrorist to take 4th and then chase the Ferraris up the road. Now, Verstappen and Sainz were also getting the elbows out around this time, with Sainz shutting the door pretty hard and Verstappen complaining.
Was naughty.
Now, considering that Verstappen's wins before he got into his rocket ship came from aggressive moves like this, it is a bit like Hitler complaining about the Holocaust.
Der Angriff Steiners war Befehl!
Eventually though, the Dutch dictator did get past Sainz and took the lead, fucking off into the distance like he does every race. This left Sainz and Charlie Boy to work together to keep Perez behind them, which went well.
With the Red Bull out of the slipstream, building up to 200 miles an hour and taking 3rd place in the Grand Prix. Went tight to the wall, Perez has got the DRS, Perez has got the place. At last, Sergio Perez slows the Red Bull down, and by the time he leaves the first chicane, he's up to 2nd place in the Grand Prix.
While all this was happening, Alex Albon... No, not Alex Albon. Walix Walbon. This man is a defensive god. Honestly, his car was wider than the average American. He kept the McLarens at bay like the 7th of December 1941 kept the Americans at bay.
Contact.
It was an incredible performance, not only to make those tyres last that long in the conditions, but also to defend and pick up P7. Absolute unit.
Yes!
Going into the latter stages of the race, and the Red Bulls had fucked off into the distance, leaving the Ferraris to fight among themselves, which caused absolutely no issues whatsoever.
Is there a late lunge? There was! And he very nearly went into the back of his teammate.
Honestly, the cherry on the Italian cake would have been the 2 Ferraris smacking into each other. There would have been a bigger Italian genocide than Mussolini. No Ferrari member would have been allowed to leave the track. Sainz and Leclerc, they would have been fed to the dogs. The engineers would have been hung, drawn and quartered wherever the centre of Monza is.
It's a Ferrari!
It's a shitbox!
But obviously they did manage to make it to the end of the race, with Sainz taking the final spot on the podium alongside Checo and of course Verstappen. So what does all this mean for the championship? Well, Verstappen and Red Bull pull even further ahead, and by God I'm so sick of saying that. Next race, which is Singapore, I'm just going to put this clip in and it will be exactly the same and it will make just as much sense. On top of that, Perez secures himself a bit more firmly in P2. The Ferraris managed to overtake Aston in the constructors because, well, Lance Stroll, who somehow managed to qualify dead last and, not counting DNFs, only managed to beat the 2 Haas cars. That is a diabolical performance that's gone under the radar. Honestly, he needs to go.
He has to go, blood.
I know there are people out there that will defend Lance with their lives, but he's fucking shocking. He's only there because of daddy's money. Look at the difference in the points between Alonso and Stroll now. He needs to go.
It's time to go!
P10 was taken by Valtteri Bottas, which gives me my second correct P10 prediction this season. Liam Lawson finishing 11th means he jumps above De Vries and Ricky in the championship, and there are 3 drivers yet to score points. Now onto the news, and we start with Toto Wolff, who is sounding so unbelievably jealous about Max's record and Red Bull's dominance, saying that Verstappen's Wikipedia record isn't important to him, which is so unbelievably salty because yes, it's not a forefront record like most wins or most podiums, but it's still a very solid record to hold, and what Max and Red Bull have done is extremely impressive, even if they are a bunch of cunts. But honestly though, if they get a higher win percentage than the 1988 MP4, I will be fucking in tears. Because while Verstappen might be comparable to Senna and Prost, Sergio Perez is not even in the same multiverse. Also the fact that the Red Bull car is nowhere near as good looking as that McLaren means that they need to at least lose 2 races for the integrity of the sport. Staying with Toto, and he's saying that Lewis Hamilton is the only F1 driver who doesn't complain. In what fucking universe? Last year, every radio message was him whining about something, from the car to the strategy or the tyres. It was so annoying. On top of that, literally 6 races ago in Austria, Toto Wolff had to get on the radio and tell Lewis to shut the fuck up because he was whining so much.
Lewis, the car is bad, we know. Please drive it.
No one is denying Lewis is an incredible driver. He is one of the greatest drivers of all time, but you also cannot deny that he loves a good whine about his car. Staying with Lewis, and he has said that Verstappen hasn't had a teammate that's better than any of his teammates. And to be honest, you could make an argument for Ricciardo being better than Bottas, or that could just be my bias because I do quite like the Smile Monkey. But other than that, he's not wrong. This then prompted Verstappen to call him jealous of his current success, which I also don't think is wrong, because he was so close to that 8th title, now it seems miles away. So I reckon that he is silently seething. In other news, Carlos Sainz had his watch stolen when he was out in Milan. Luckily, he was able to get it back, but an unfortunate situation nonetheless. Mick Schumacher is said to be without options for the next season in F1, which would mean another season of sitting in Mercedes' garage.
Still, could be worse.
Could be a Red Bull Junior driver.
You don't have future here. You don't have future. You can never make it.
Lance Stroll has said that Aston Martin must find out the issue with the AMR 23. And let's be honest, it doesn't take a mechanic to work out that the twat behind the wheel is the problem. Fernando Alonso has said that he would take Lewis over a rookie, even if Hamilton was 80 years old. Honestly, these two can't really decide if they like each other or not. Half the time they're at each other's throat, and the other half they're calling each other the best drivers to ever exist. Either fuck or break up, just get on with it. The new F2 cars were revealed earlier this week, and they looked a little bit strange with a new wing not really fitting the body of the car. And finally, congratulations to Gabriele Bortoleto for winning the F3 championship, which had its final race in Monza. In a bit.